Welcome back, troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. I've hunted down a really rare beast to share with you guys today. So, a couple of months ago, we did this episode. It was like a hot or not type thing. There was a strangely modified Silverburst and a really cool Firebird. That was cool, but not necessarily the color scheme that I liked. It had this like snakeskin thing like going on. And lo and behold, I found another one. Outside of the USA, mind you, but I found another one from the year 1991. And I told you guys I would love to document one of these things for the right price. And this thing was priced, a little bit more than I wanted to pay, but there was another offer on it. I just thought, I'm going to be physically ill if I do not get this guitar to document it. So I just paid him his price. Full asking, and here we are. A beautiful Firebird. We do not review Firebirds too often, but this is a big old case. It doesn't weigh all that much though, surprisingly. Looks like combination is 651, but we can just reset that real quick to 000, so we no longer need tape. Check out my lockpicking episode if you need to learn how to work those things. All right, I didn't like that last one's color scheme that much, but wait until you see this. It's phenomenal, but it's hidden underneath the pink blanket. Here we go. Oh, yep. This is in my personal collection. I'm sorry, you're not allowed to buy this thing from me. That is sweet. Okay, so this one is red. Doesn't that look cool? And it's got the matching red headstock on it too. The red Gibson logo. It's got all the gold hardware on this thing. Doesn't it look so regal? My wife thinks it looks like it got ran over by a truck. That's the first thing she said when she saw this. She's like, oh, it looks like it got ran over by a truck. Oh, thanks, honey. This is my new signature collector's piece right here, and you think it got ran over. Okay. But anyways, snakeskin fancy appointments aside, what is the story behind these things? So apparently, in 1991, late in the year, Tom Murphy and all the other guys at the custom shop at that point in time, they wanted to do something special for the Arlington Guitar Show, one of the biggest ones in the country. So they created 4 Firebirds for that particular one that had these simulated snakeskin finishes. As I was telling you earlier, we had that kind of greenish yellow looking one, but here is one that is done up in red. I have not seen the other ones, and it's also possible that this could have been created after that. I kind of needed to look at the serial number. That's really hard to see. Like, you can just barely make out Made in USA impression into there, and then like maybe a 9, 1, 2, 3. It almost looks like a 0. So it might have been like a late 1990, maybe not necessarily for that one or 91. I'm not sure, but we've got the Custom Shop original decal. That last one that we had saw was an edition. So maybe this wasn't part of those 4, but it certainly belongs within it. But I just wanted to talk about early 90s Firebirds in general today, because I think this is an undersung era of Gibson. It's the next big thing. And the way to make people interested in new guitars is to teach them about it. Like, there's tons of articles on 70s and 80s Gibsons, and there's a lot of them on the modern day stuff. But as far as the 90s, I think a lot of this is unexplored territory. Like, had I known stuff like this existed, back when I first started collecting, I probably would have bought more of this stuff. But this is a cool piece. So when I'm talking cool Firebirds, I'm talking things like this. Earlier this year on the Play and Trade Guitar channel, they gave away a 1990 Firebird that had this green burst finish. I really desperately wanted to buy that thing, but the guy who won it, he did not want to sell. Fair enough. First eyes on this thing, I don't want to sell it either. But that was like my first, okay, they did weird stuff in the 90s for Firebirds. And then a couple of months on, we saw a purple burst version essentially of the same thing with that same pearloid pickguard. There was even a matching Thunderbird bass to that showed up at the same time. There was also kind of a blue one. I couldn't quite tell if it had the burst to it. The edges were sprayed, but it had a matching headstock. And then there were also more traditional colors from like the custom color era of Firebirds. But hey, since we don't see too many Firebirds, let's talk Firebirds. What is this? Most accurately described as maybe a Firebird 5, because there's 4 main Firebird types of this style. So this is a Firebird 5 because it has the 2 mini humbuckers, an ABR1 bridge with a stop bar tail piece. Firebird 1s just have the one pickup. Firebird 3s essentially looks exactly like this, but they have a wrap tailpiece. But a lot of people get confused about those because a lot of the vintage ones will have a vibrola unit on it. And then a 7 essentially gives it Les Paul custom-like attributes, ebony fretboard, they get a little bit fancier. The addition of a third pickup, they're just really fancy boys. So Firebird 5, very cool. And obviously, I like Firebirds that have the big old banjo-style tuners. They're dangerous because the way that they sit in cases, at least on the vintage ones, you gotta make sure there's enough clearance that this bottom tuner doesn't hit the end of the case and crack your headstock. That's why most of the vintage ones are broken. See, even this reissue one is pretty darn close to the edge of that case, so definitely want to crank that up a little bit. So if you're ever shipping a vintage Firebird in its original case, like the true 60s ones, you want to actually remove at least the top tuner, maybe even the top couple ones. So this was described as like a 7.5 out of 10, which kind of got me scared, but I think the reason why he went for 7.5 is just like that other one we saw, this has got finish checking all over it. It's like vertical. I was thinking in that episode it might have had to do something with a metallic finish, but I'm not necessarily seeing that on this, so I don't know. I don't know how they did this finish. Maybe we can look at it on the workbench. I'm sure it's just like a roller or something. I mean, this doesn't look that crazy. Like maybe they did run it over with a truck, a small painting truck, like vroom, vroom type stuff. Maybe Tom Murphy will see this video and chime in. Let's see, do we got any cool case candy? No, unfortunately no. No paperwork on this one, but thankfully that other one showed up earlier this year, so we do know the story. But to learn more about this cool beast, let's go ahead and throw it on the workbench and take an individual look at its parts and specs. Inside our really cool Firebird here. Unfortunately, I had to make a decision because this appears to be a real celluloid pickguard, which means it's gonna off-gas, it's going to crack, it's gonna distort and warp in good time, and it's pretty much at that time. Laying it down flat right here, you can see it was already raising up, and like sometimes vintage Stratocaster pickguards, I think that's what it is, you'll take the screws off and then you won't actually be able to get the pickguard back on because it shrinks after it doesn't have that pressure on it. So unfortunately, if I do decide to ultimately keep this, I'm gonna have to replace the pickguard because this thing, we're lucky that the finish is okay because sometimes these things will off gas, it'll destroy your pickups, and I think that might be what's actually happening right here. You see how normally it's a nice shiny gold, but on the edges it's like almost a matted finish? That's due to the off-gassing, I bet. So if this sits in the case, it'll just slowly eat away all the hardware, and sometimes it'll cause like nitro burns on the finish. So unfortunately, that's the coolest part about this whole thing, but you gotta think about the guitar. I mean, if it was out in a display case, it'd be perfectly fine. But if you store your collection in cases as I do right now, that's something, it's like my Hippo guitar. I had to take the cool pickguard off. Here's another good proof of what I'm talking about. You see how all these screws look rusty? That's because of the chemicals eating them. So yeah, if anybody knows somebody that can make me a replica of this just out of the Perloid stuff that won't off-gas, yeah, that'd be nice. The white needs to have a slight patina to it though. But anyways, in removing those screws, unfortunately, there were a few light chips out of the pickguard that came off right there. You can see them right here. But, I mean, to be fair, there were already chips around the other ones. And I'd have to take it off eventually. I would rather have small chips than a complete crack off this pickguard, because it's really cool. It looks like they just took a white celluloid pickguard and then maybe sprayed it over in a red finish, but yet left that white, now creamed over outer layer, kind of like a binding. Because when you flip this over, it's all white. It's got some red streaks in it from the finishing department. But other than that, I'm not quite sure how to explain how they did all that. Maybe they did just inlay a red moto on top. That's a really cool pickguard, especially with the Firebird emblem right there. But this is where your toggle switch gets mounted to. And underneath that, you have this style of route. So that's routed deeper right there because it's an L-style switch like what you would find on an SG. And then your pickup leads come out the side there, and then that goes down into your controls that we'll see on the back. So now let's check out our pickups. These are Firebird pickups. They're a mini humbucker, but they're different from like a Les Paul Deluxe's mini humbucker. These do not have a pole piece. Other than that, I'll be honest, I'm not that knowledgeable on Firebird pickups, but we can definitely get our readings here. Looks like our neck pickup reads 14.97 k ohms, our middle position 8.93, and our bridge appears to have some sort of an issue. I'm guessing I might need to clean this. After cleaning out the electronics, I was still getting that too high of reading, so I swapped it over to the 200 k ohm setting and I get something, so it's probably gonna work. It's just a really hot pickup or something that I don't know about Firebirds, I guess. But anyways, they've got the patent number on the back. I believe even the modern day mini humbuckers still utilize that one. But inside here, you can see it's just a red paint and then they've got like a black spray in there. But our neck pickup is just completely bare. Now you're probably wondering, hey, where's our long neck tenon or something? Firebirds, this style, are neck through. So this is the longest tenon you're ever gonna get. It makes up the entire body. So you've got mahogany wings on Firebirds that join in like a V shape down here. This is a pretty bad first Firebird to document on the channel because we can't see anything. But normally you can see like a triangular groove right there, and then they just inset those within the neck that extends out here. And it's a multi-piece neck, so you've got walnut and mahogany stripes kind of in the middle. You can kind of see that within our truss rod cavity, at least one of the stripes right there. But now the bridge on this is a real Gibson ABR1, stylized after the 70s and 80s versions, because I mean we're still pretty early in 1990 at this point. This one has a full weight gold tailpiece that looks like this. As far as our controls, 2 volumes, 2 tones, nothing too crazy with that. Output jack on the front. But now we can take a second to appreciate this finish. It really does look like they might have just laid a template over top of it and then sprayed it, or used some sort of like a roller on it. That would be my best guess of how they did this. But the red and black looks way better than that last one, in my opinion. I mean, if you like actual snakes, you probably like the other one because it looks more actual snake-like, whereas this is like some demon snake out of your wildest imaginations or something very venomous. I mean, the big seller of this one for me came down to the cool pickguard and the red-colored Gibson logo with that matching headstock. It just looks so cool, especially for an old model. Like, old Firebirds, what makes them cool are the custom car colors. They were trying to compete with Fender at that point in time. So it's nice that I'm discovering an era of affordable custom color Firebirds, because collecting the originals, they're like 100K a pop for a really rare color. But these, you know, even at a tenth or a little bit less of that price, they're still pretty darn cool. But anyways, moving on from our really cool mahogany body here, we've got that same neck that we were just talking about, because that's part of the body, and a rosewood fretboard. Now, it was looking like the rosewood board was a little bit dried out, so I decided to go ahead and condition it a little bit. You've got the acrylic trapezoid inlays, as is common on these guys. We've got 22 likely medium jumbo style frets, 24 3/4 inch scale length with a 1.71 inch nut width. So a little bit wider than a lot of the guitars we document, but just by a hair, and 2.08 by the 12th. 0.86 at the first fret neck depth, and 0.99 by the 12th. All right, so it actually measures pretty chunky. Actually quite the interesting profile. So first fret looks like this, 12th fret like that. So this is more of like a rounded C-shaped neck, which would be great for like chords, but then it just gets almost to D-shaped territory there, just a really wide C. But despite looking super rounded here, it's a very wide feeling neck. It's not what I generally like, but hey, you never know until you try it. Face of the headstock time. You can see they gave the headstock that same coloring, and then they put that black veneer over top of it. And then over top of the veneer, you put your truss rod cover on it, which has your Gibson logo attached to it. But thankfully, our truss rod is in perfect shape on this one. However, I think I now have the culprit for all the finish checking that we've seen on all these. This pickguard. So it's not because it's a metallic finish, it's because of the off-gassing. So there's pretty much vertical finish checking all over this guitar, but thankfully the red and black really hides it. But it is present all over this thing, and it is the vertical kind. And vertical finish checking usually means either moisture damage or something else. And the something else in this case would be the gases. Man, the back of this thing looks really cool without, any pickups or anything obscuring the red snakeskin finish. It's not textured by any means. That's just in the finish. So if you're curious about that, no, it's not like a real snakeskin covered guitar. But here's the back plate here. I always thought this would be much larger. They're working in really close quarters here. Looks like 34th week of 1990 on our pots here. So they're definitely original and correct. Wiring looks okay to me. But there you can see that raised portion of the back and the top right there. That's just how Firebirds are. You've got your strap button right here, slightly offset, and then one here at the heel. Nice and sculpted away for high fret access. And the neck also has finish checking all over it, and they even did the design. Probably pretty easy with the roller, I would guess, if that is indeed what they did. But this is what makes this one special to me. Custom Shop Original. Things that have that decal are really, really special. Because the Custom Shop Edition decal, that got thrown on a whole bunch of stuff, but to have an original, that means it was some sort of a one-off. And you see these things from approximately 1982 all the way until about 1994. And then they start going away and they switch to real Custom Shop decals. And just because you see a guitar that says Custom Shop Original does not mean it was made in a custom shop. You gotta remember, a dedicated building to the custom shop did not exist until late 1993. This is a production level Firebird. It's no different than anything else. It just got some special attention when it came to the finishing department. People get confused on that all the time in the 80s models. Nope, not actually custom shops. That's why they call them prehistorics, you know, before the historic specs. But you could also be like pre-custom shops. But if you get the light in there just right, you can see there is a serial number. It's just the finish is so thick we can't read it. Nope, that didn't work. Sometimes you can take some painter's tape, stick it over here, take like a pencil or something, really press down, and you can just like barely make it out. You might have to go the blacklight route on this. It is there. It's likely a 1991, but honestly, I can't tell. But we definitely know it's at least a very late 1990, because that dates to the 34th week. But hey, how about these banjo tuners? This is the first time I've ever had these on a guitar. Well, first time I've actually paid attention. I think I've only had 2 Firebirds. There was that 50th anniversary gold one that unfortunately sold before I could review it. Then I had a 1982. But this is the first time I actually remember. So these are actually like stepped. You can feel like a notch every time. It's interesting. They stick out the bottom, so it kind of hurts your wrist to be like that. Honestly, I don't like them that much. Like, I like the way they function, and I definitely love the way that they look, how they're not sticking off the edge. It gives the Firebird that iconic look. But that comes at an expense of, oops, your headstock has more room to get dinged and cracked off. And look how long your E string is. It's the opposite of normal. Pretty cool. But our last spec to capture here is the weight. A little over 8 pounds. 8 pounds, 0.9 ounces. Let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear how it sounds. All right, what's it like holding a Firebird? It's definitely a neck-divey instrument, but once you get it set up, it kind of balances in its own roundabout way, but that's definitely a heavy headstock. I really do like these banjo-style tuners, because as you're tuning it, you just get to look at the tuner, so you don't have to accidentally get on the wrong tuner or something like that, so that's kind of an interesting side profile shot. But I guess I can see why Gibson doesn't do the banjo-style ones on like the customs and things like that. But anyways, let's go ahead and get some tones out of this thing. Very bright sounding guitar. But if you think that's a little bit too bright, I found you can get a completely different sound just by rolling it down to about 7. So here's that neck pickup. Roll that down to about 7. the brightness. Sounds more like a regular humbucker at that point. Let's try that with the bridge pickup too. That's really bright. Down to about 5. And our middle position, we'll put both of them about 7. All right, that sounds pretty nice clean. Let's go ahead and kick on a little bit of distortion. This thing sounds really good distorted. It's different from what I'm used to, and these smaller pickups give you more room to pick. And this thing is just so fancy looking. It's like, yeah, this inspires you to want to play some stuff. That bridge pickup is just fantastic. I mean, it's probably microphonic. If you touch it, it's really loud. But just listen to that. That middle's got a nice spank to it. Now that we know all about this really sweet Firebird, what are my final thoughts on this thing? I finally put my finger on it why I like this. It reminds me of like an emperor's clothing or something. It's got that dark red, it's adorned with the gold, it's got that really cool flashy pickguard on it, but it's got enough evilness spread across it that even if you're not really crazy about the whole snakeskin thing, you can see a whole bunch of different things, whether that's snakeskin tire tracks or dark threads on your clothing. There's something for everybody on this one, I think. Will we see more Firebirds in the future on this channel? Certainly. It was an interesting tonal opportunity. It's way different than we normally demo, but I think I found a new kind of niche era of Gibson that I've just fallen in love with. I can't wait to document more of these weird custom colored Firebirds from the early 90s. So if you got one and you want to sell it, I can definitely see myself creating a little collection of these things because they're just kind of cool. It's a shame I'm gonna have to replace the pick guard, but hopefully I can find something very similar and keep this, intact and not all shrunken and terrible, but only time will tell for that. Now, as far as the neck profile, I actually kind of grew to like it. It's very wide feeling, but that makes you play a little bit differently. Like, how sometimes people will like 2015 Gibson specs because they have those wider necks? I mean, this isn't anywhere near as wide as that, but, it's just something different. And it's got enough chunk to the neck that it feels good. But, man, Firebirds, especially when they're flashy like this, they feel great to play. It's kind of like an Explorer, but not quite as extreme. And the Explorers are definitely my second favorite body shape from Gibson. So, Troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed checking this thing out. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And we will catch you tomorrow on the next episode. Take care. As always, if you're interested in being the next owner of one of these demo guitars, you can check them out on my website, troglysguitarshow.com. There's some links in the description.